Yeah.
Tell me when, Jess.
We're good to go.
We're good to go. Okay. All right. Well, just like we've done in past Zoom meetings, what's going to happen is I'm going to open the meeting and then I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Spence, okay, who will enlighten everyone listening as to how they can speak, how to do it. And then don't panic if you don't get everything down that she says, because periodically during the meeting, I'll ask her to do it again. Okay. We value everything that everyone wants to say today. Okay. As every day. All right, my name is Richard Jerzak, okay? This is a meeting of the South Kingstown, Rhode Island Zoning Board of Review. Members present are Robert Cagnetta, John Bernardo, Thomas Daniels, William Rosen, and Richard Jerzak, okay? Also present are Wayne Pimentel, the South Kingstown zoning official, Jessica Spence, South Kingstown Administrative Support Associate, and attorney Amy Goins, okay, the assistant South Kingstown Town Solicitor, okay? All right, we only have 5 members here today, so all of the members will participate and all of the members will vote, okay? You are here today, what do we have? A variance and we have the special use permit, okay? This is a quasi judicial body created by South Kingstown ordinance pursuant to state law. We don't follow the strict rules of evidence. We operate in what we believe to be a fair and equitable manner, okay? When your petition is called, please clearly set forth your case, okay? I'm gonna ask you to spell your name first, then I'm gonna swear you in, all right? You will present your petition, okay? You may also have other witness testify in support of your petition. The board members will then ask questions of you and or your witnesses. After you are done, anyone else wishing to present testimony in support or opposition to the petition or ask questions will then it's not come to the microphone anymore. They will identify themselves, be sworn in, and present their testimony. Board members may again ask questions. Once all have spoken, the petitioner shall be allowed to answer questions raised by the audience and or to respond to the audience comments. After hearing all testimony, before the vote is taken, board members will be asked to openly discuss the evidence presented. With regard to variance and special use permits, that's what we have today. 4 of the 5 members voting must vote in favor of the petition for the relief sought to be granted. Okay, Jess, would you now tell us how we deal with Zoom? Go ahead.
Sure. So thank you all for coming tonight. So for the testimony part, all applicants will remain muted and their video will remain off until your petition has been called. We only have the 1 petition tonight. So everyone, I'm going to go ahead and turn on video for anyone who's not on. If the applicants have any type of supporting documents that they previously submitted to me, you can direct me to bring them up and I'll be able to screen share them and reference certain points for you. The applicants, as Rick had mentioned, will give your testimony. The board will ask any type of relevant questions. Once the applicants have completed the testimony, and this is really for point to the attendees, the chairman will ask if there is anyone in attendance who wishes to speak in regards to this petition. At that point, the attendee should raise their hand and they will be unmuted and allowed to speak. When you're finished speaking, we're going to put you back on mute. Once all the testimony has been heard, the applicant will be muted, and actually it doesn't really matter because we only have the 1 petition tonight. So if you are an attendee and you're calling in, to raise your hand, there is the function right on your computer on the bottom that's going to say raise hand. If you're calling in by phone, and I know we have 1 person who is, you're going to hit *9 on your phone to raise your hand, and then *6 will mute and unmute. And we'll go over that again once we, get to that part. We do have a question and answer function that is only to be used if someone is having technical difficulties. We will not answer any questions pertaining to the petition in that forum. And then just for review, if anyone has questions in regards to any documents that have been submitted, all the documents are available to view online at southkingstownri.com under the building department and current zoning applications. And that's it.
Okay. All right, before we start with the one petition we do have, we have a petition that was continued from last meeting. And I think that's going to be continued again. It's the petition of Daniel L. Cunningham with regard to 35 Fire Lane 2, South Kingstown, Rhode Island, Assessors Map 82-1, Lot 1-1, and is zoned R80. Okay, I believe there's a letter in file from Mr. Kenyon. Mr. Kenyon, would you tell us what you want to do here?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant, Daniel Cunningham. We're still addressing some of the issues that have been raised, and we need some additional time. So we're looking for a continuance till your July 15th, 2020 meeting.
Okay, all right. Board members, anyone have an issue with that?
No.
Okay, will someone make a motion, please?
Yeah, I'll move to continue the matter of Daniel Cunningham. The chairman read the description of the application and the petition into the record. And I move that we continue that for 1 month, I believe is requested. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Continue it from 1 month. So moved.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Daniels. Will someone second it?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Rosen. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. That is, what's the date that goes to, Jessica?
July 15th.
July 15th. Okay, all right. Now let's get into the substance of what we have, all right? Continuation of the petition of Charles Walsh, 3 Stone Post Way, Greenville, Rhode Island, 02828, for a special use permit and dimensional variance under the zoning ordinance as follows. The applicant is seeking to construct a new single-family dwelling. A special use permit is required because the proposed OWTS is proposed to be located within 150 feet of a wetland. A favorable advisory opinion was obtained by the South Kingstown Conservation Commission on March 3rd, 2020. The dwelling will be located 25 feet from the front property line. The required front yard setback is 40 feet. Relief of 15 feet is requested. Lot size is 0.57 acres. A dimensional variance is required for zoning ordinance 401, dimensional regulations, and the special use permit is required for zoning ordinance 5041, special use permit, location of OWTS, and section 907, standards of relief. The owner of the property is Louise Marie Walsh Living Trust for premises located on Rosebriar Avenue, Assessors Map 90-4, Lot 215, and zoned R30. Okay, I believe you're here for this, Mr. Kenyon, right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant, Charles Walsh. Mr. Walsh is the trustee of the Louise Marie Walsh Living Trust, which is the owner of property on Rosebriar Avenue designated as Tax Assessor Plat 90-4, Lot 215. The property is a little over 1/2 acre in size, and it's in an R30 zoning district. The applicant's proposing the construction of a 2-bedroom home with a 738 square foot footprint and a 10-foot by 12-foot attached deck to the north side of the house. The use as a single-family residence is permitted by right under the zoning ordinance. He's also proposing the installation of an OWTS in the northwest corner of the property. The proposed OWTS is an AX20 bottomless sand filter, which has been approved by the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. The installation of the OWTS requires a special use permit under section 504.1 of the zoning ordinance, as it's within 150 feet of a wetland. We appeared before the Conservation Commission on this application, and they requested several modifications to the plan. They asked that the applicant reduce the lawn area to 2,000 square feet or less and restrict the use of fertilizers, which was agreed to by the applicant. They also requested the applicant move that house forward on the lot further away from the wetlands. The applicant agreed to that and resubmitted the OWTS to DEM for review with the house moved forward on the lot. DEM approved the move. And again, we appeared before the Conservation Commission. At their March 3rd, 2020 meeting, the Conservation Commission voted to recommend approval of the application, stating in part that it appears to minimize potential impacts on the adjacent wetlands, and as designed complies with the standards listed in section 504 of the zoning ordinance. The recommendation included one condition, which was the use of fertilizers on the parcel be prohibited, which the applicant was fine with. By moving the house forward, it necessitated that the applicant request a front yard variance of 15 feet, as 40 is required in the zoning district and 25 is proposed. That house will meet all the other setback and dimensional requirements under the zoning ordinance. As some of you may recall, that previously an applicant was unable to request a dimensional variance along with a special use permit under section 504. The town amended section 907D1 of the zoning ordinance, which now states that the zoning board of review may grant dimensional variances which provide relief from the front, side, and rear setback requirements for single-family dwellings and accessory structures in conjunction with a special use permit allowing the installation of an on-site wastewater treatment system within 150 feet of a wetland. So now an applicant can request both a front, rear, or side yard setback variance along with the special use permit under section 504. At this time, I'm going to ask that some of the documents that we submitted be referred to the following. One is the original OWTS approval from DEM dated June 26, 2019. Then the number two is the revised OWTS approval from DEM dated January 28, 2020. The site plan prepared by Josh Rosen dated January 15, 2020. The engineer's report prepared by Josh Rosen dated December 12, 2019. 5 is the Conservation Commission recommendation dated March 4th, 2020. And 6 is the report prepared by Ed Pimentel. And Jess, maybe if you could put the site plan up on the screen for the most latest approval.
Is that okay, John?
Let me see. Yes. So with me tonight is the applicant, Charles Walsh, along with Ed Pimentel, who's our planning expert, and Josh Rosen, who's the project engineer. And I'm going to ask that at this time that Josh be sworn in.
Okay. All right, who is, it's Josh Walsh? Okay, would you spell your name, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's Josh Rosen, J-O.
Oh, Josh Rosen, okay.
Yep, no problem. J-O-S-H-U-A, Joshua Rosen, R-O-S-E-N.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
John, before we get into this, Amy, I have a question for you, okay? This is the first time with the Zoom format or platform that we have the potential for having attorneys on the other side. And I want to make sure I don't go afoul of allowing any type of cross-examination. What's your suggestion on that? How should we handle?
Sure. One of the first, this is Amy Goins, legal counsel. One of the first questions I had for Jess is, I thought I saw in one of the latest correspondence from the objectors, someone indicated that they had retained an attorney, and I wanted to confirm two things. One, I wanted to confirm that the town has not received any correspondence directly from the attorney regarding the objector's attorney regarding the application. And two, I just want to ask Attorney Kenyon if he has had contact with an attorney representing any of the objectors.
For the town, this is Jessica speaking. We have not received any direct correspondence from the attorney, only the letter from the residents of Rosebriar.
Okay.
And this is John Kenyon. Originally, there was a letter stating that they were retaining Neil Philbin as their attorney. I contacted Attorney Philbin, and he said he had not been retained. And I have not heard from any other lawyers, though I did see the letter yesterday.
Yeah.
And just for the record, we have continued this for 2 months
Mhm.
at the neighbor's request in order to give them more time.
Yeah, so my position would be, the objector the objector or objectors have represented, they've retained someone to represent them, and that's fine. I would think it, personally, if I were retained to represent objectors and I couldn't make the meeting, A, or I, B, wasn't familiar enough, in other words, if someone said to me 2 days ago, can you handle this? I would submit a letter requesting a continuance. I think the fact that we haven't gotten that may be indicative that he's not entirely on the hook. So my suggestion would be hear from Mr. Kenyon and his team regarding the application, then obviously open up the public hearing for comments. I would want to hear from the objectors directly as to what the plan was, if any, and if they intend to request a continuance so that the attorney who perhaps was only retained recently can testify. That's going to be up to the board. So that's, at this point in time, that's all I can say. It's hard to know whether there really is an attorney on the other side.
Why don't we see if there's one in attendance? Is there an attorney?
The name was John Casey of Robinson and Cole, I think it was.
It was,
Someone-
I recognize all of the other names as objectors. I'm assuming Beach House is also one of the objectors. There is the phone number there, and I don't know who the phone number belongs to,
Okay,
but it's
all
a
right.
Rhode Island area code, not a Connecticut. So-
Well, if you are an attorney representing someone, will you raise your hand, please? Not you, John. We know you're an attorney representing someone. Like, anyone raising their hand?
No
Jess?
one's raising their hand.
Okay, all right, then I'm gonna let, all right, Josh has already been sworn in, so go ahead, John.
Thank you. Josh, where are you employed?
Principal Engineering, Inc., office at 27 Secundit Ridge Drive in Tiverton.
And what are your duties there?
I am a partner and senior project manager.
And how long have you been working there?
2.5 years.
And where were you employed before that?
The town of South Kingstown, town engineer.
Thank you. And are you a registered professional engineer in the state of Rhode Island?
Yes, I am.
And how long have you been registered?
12 years.
And do you hold any other registrations or licenses in Rhode Island?
I am a Rhode Island DEM Class 3 on-site wastewater treatment system designer.
And have you testified before zoning boards previously?
Yes, I have.
And in what capacity were you testifying?
As a project engineer for special use permit and variance applications.
And have you testified before this zoning board previously as an expert in engineering?
Yes, I have.
I would ask that Mr. Rosen be recognized as an expert in civil engineering, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, board members, does anyone have a problem with recognizing this gentleman as an expert? Please speak. I can't see you, so just speak up if you do. Okay, hearing no one, then so be it.
Thank you. And Josh, are you familiar with the applicant's property on Rosebriar Avenue?
Yes, I am.
And did you prepare the site plan that was submitted with the application?
I did.
And what is the zoning for the lot?
It's an R30 zone.
And are you familiar with the existing uses surrounding the property?
Yes.
What type of uses are in the general location of the applicant's property?
They're all residential, single-family uses.
And how big is the applicant's property?
It's approximately 25,000 square feet, just over a half an acre.
And can you describe the existing conditions of the property?
Sure. So the property, as it's situated, is located on the easterly side of Rosebriar Avenue at its northerly terminus. And generally speaking, this property is consisting of the front portion of land, of upland land, which is brush and tree vegetation, and a wooded swamp wetland system at the rear of the property, which is the eastern side of the property. The property slopes from the very front property line gently toward that wetland system to the east. And the balance of the area in the right of way actually is draining toward the street system. So the property line is like a ridge as far as topography goes and watershed. The area to the east of the property has been designated as a wooded swamp and classified as freshwater wetlands in the vicinity of the coast by CRMC.
And did someone flag the wetlands for the applicant?
Yes, so the wetlands were flagged by Natural Resource Services in April of 2017. And in July of that same year, an application was submitted prior to us getting involved in the application, but an application was submitted to CRMC to request determination of the presence of wetlands and to verify that edge. And an edge verification was in fact received in July of 2017 from CRMC. That wetland is shown, or as shown on this site plan, was what was confirmed by CRMC.
Thank you. And what is the applicant proposing to construct on the property?
So here the applicant has a new single-family dwelling, 2 bedrooms, with a water service, a public water service from Rosebriar Avenue, permeable driveway system for access and egress, and an on-site wastewater treatment system to service the 2-bedroom dwelling, as well as a rain garden drainage area for the rooftop runoff.
And how many bedrooms is he proposing?
It's a 2-bedroom dwelling proposed and approved by Rhode Island DEM at this point.
And with that approval will require a deed restriction be recorded, limiting it to 2 bedrooms?
That's correct.
And how big is the proposed house?
Footprint is a 736 square foot footprint. Could be 2 levels, but that's the ground footprint.
And does the proposed house meet the side and rear yard setbacks under the zoning ordinance?
Yes, it does.
And does the proposed driveway provide adequate ingress and egress to the house?
Yes,
Does it provide adequate area for parking for the proposed house?
yes. In total, the driveway is approximately 500 square feet, 40 feet long by an average or maximum of 16 feet wide. So there's ample area for parking and access and egress to and from the house.
In your opinion, will the use of the proposed driveway negatively affect the traffic flow in the area?
No, it will not.
In fact, is the house on a dead end? One of the last house on the street?
Correct. On the easterly side, yes.
And does the proposed driveway provide adequate access in case of fire, emergency, or catastrophe?
Yes,
Is there adequate area for trash storage?
there is.
And will the property be serviced by public water?
Yes.
And who will be providing that?
That would be the town of South Kingstown, South Shore District.
And is there any issues with tying into that water service?
No,
And is there any issue with providing electrical service to the lot?
there's not.
Is the applicant proposing any signage on the property?
No,
Are they proposing any non-residential exterior lighting?
nope.
And now, has the applicant received approval from RIDM for the proposed OWTS?
Yes, yes. And as it was pointed out, we received an initial approval and then through the variance process, and then went back and modified or submitted for redesign to that approval when the house was relocated or shifted to the west or to the front, and received a second approval at that point.
And what type of system are you proposing?
So this is an Advantex AX20 filter system, pretreatment system with a bottomless sand filter as the final means of disposal.
And where is the proposed system located?
The septic tank and AX20 filter and pump chamber are located in the front of the proposed dwelling, between the front building line and the property line. That's on the easterly side, the southerly side of the lot. And on the northerly side of the lot, northwesterly corner, the bottomless sand filter, the eventual means of disposal, that is located northwesterly corner of the lot.
And how did you come up with those locations?
So through the design process and through the variance process with DEM, our objective was obviously to maximize our setbacks from the particular constraints to the greatest extent possible. So positioning those components of the OWTS in a location where we maximize distance to wetlands, distance to property line setbacks, and water lines, drain lines, and the building structure was sort of a back and forth process with DEM, and to find a balance to that was approvable by the department is the plan, the way it's situated in front of us today, and the way it was approved.
And how far from the wetland edge is the system located?
So the nearest point of the bottomless sand filter is just over 20 feet. The other components are just shy of a 50-foot minimum setback. I think 48 feet for the building sewer pipe, the septic tank and filter. And the actual pump basin or the pump chamber is actually located, I think, approximately 56 feet from the wetland edge. That's greater than the 50-foot DEM requirement.
And is that why we're here tonight, requesting a special use permit to locate it within 150 feet of a wetland?
Yes, that's correct.
And in your opinion, is the proposed location as far from the wetland that the system could be located and still meet DEM's requirements?
Yes.
And can you just briefly explain how the system works?
Yeah, so the Advantex system is a recirculating textile filter, the way it's set up. This is an area that is a critical resource area. And as such, the objective of these pretreatment systems are to mitigate nitrogen loading to the water body in the resource area. So this is a recirculation textile filter at the septic system, bringing the effluent for a second treatment to the initial head of the system where the carbon source is the greatest. And that's where we get the approval for the denitrification. Once that initial wastewater is recirculated through the pretreatment section of the treatment train, it's then pumped at the pump chamber up and out to the disposal field, which in this case is your bottomless sand filter. And at the bottomless sand filter, there's further treatment of the effluent and it's discharged obviously into the ground surface beneath.
And as you stated, the proposed system's considered alternative technologies, correct?
Correct.
And what is the separation distance between the bottom of the leaching field and the seasonal high water table?
So for this design, as I mentioned, in the resource area, it is a 4-foot minimum required separation from groundwater to the sand filter, and that's what we've provided in this design.
Now, section 504 or 0.4B of the zoning ordinance requires that the alternative technologies provide a certain level of treatment as measured at the outlet of the treatment unit prior to discharge to a drain field. Are you familiar with those requirements?
I am.
And does the proposed system have a minimum total nitrogen removal of 50%?
Yes, it does.
And what is the minimum total nitrogen removal of the proposed system?
It's less than 19 milligrams per liter.
And again, that's my next question. And does it provide for less than or equal to 19 milligrams per total nitrogen? And you just stated it meets that requirement, correct?
Correct.
And what is the total reduction in TSS and BOD for this system?
So TSS and BOD reduction are less than 20 milligrams per liter.
And what is the minimum fecal coliform removal for the proposed system?
Less than 10 colonies per milliliter.
And is there any potable water supply less than 100 feet from the drain field?
There's not.
And will the proposed system require a continuous operation and maintenance agreement with the owner?
Yes.
And will that be recorded in the land evidence records?
Yes.
And are you proposing any stormwater management for the property?
We are.
And what are you proposing?
So we have designed and located a rain garden for filtration of the rooftop runoff generated from the 736 square foot footprint on site that's located just to the west of the deck and, I'm sorry, just to the north of the deck attached to the proposed dwelling.
And did you supply the town with drainage calculations for a 24-hour, 25-year storm?
Yes,
And have you provided control measures to ensure that no net increase between pre and post-development site conditions and volume or rate of stormwater runoff for such a 24-hour, 25-year rainfall event occurs on the adjacent properties or roadways from the subject property?
we have.
And does the proposed stormwater management design maintain the existing natural drainage patterns to the degree feasible?
Yes, and a note on that, through the design process with DEM, we were sort of mandated to go out and supply an extensive field survey of the topographic conditions of the street system and the condition of the elevations at our front property line to demonstrate the path of stormwater in the public right of way, as well as the path of stormwater through the property to the wetland, and then sort of integrate those drainage patterns into the design in the sense that we had to maintain those historical patterns and not cause any disruption or any adverse impact or lead to any exacerbation of any conditions that are at the site or in the roadway currently today. So that was something that DEM had us look into during our process, something that typically we wouldn't necessarily get into that level of detail, but we certainly provided what was necessary at their request. And that inevitably led to a piece of this, led to the approval.
Thank you. And does the stormwater design divert the water away from the OWTS?
Yes, it does.
And is there a minimum 15-foot horizontal separation distance between the OWTS drain field and the edge of any stormwater infiltration system?
Yes, and we exceed that.
And have you calculated the buildable area of the subject property?
I did. So the original area, or the actual area of the property, again, is about 25,000 square feet. It's 24,645 square feet. The buildable area, subtracting out that wooded swamp to the east of the property, is approximately 9,797 square feet. With that, we have a 736 square foot footprint and a 120 square foot deck for a total of 856 square feet of impervious coverage. That impervious coverage, 856 divided by our 9,797 square feet of buildable area yields 8.7% as far as the impervious coverage proposed on the lot.
And so the proposed impervious coverage meets the 15% maximum under section 504?
Yes, it does.
And in your professional opinion, has the OWTS been located as far as possible from the wetland edge?
Yes,
Has the house been located as far as possible from the wetland edge while still meeting reasonable setbacks?
yes. We've made that, making the request for the dimensional variance and therefore moving the house 15 feet to the front. We're able to achieve nearly 20 feet of a separation from the wetland edge to the nearest corner of the house.
And now, have you reviewed the recommendation from the Conservation Commission?
Yes,
And can you go through their recommendation, explain to the board what has been changed to comply with their request?
yes, absolutely. So one of the items that was requested or recommended was to limit the ancillary areas within the developable footprint to 2,000 square feet of lawn when the project's completed and stabilized. So we've, in our latest submission, have reduced the limits of disturbance and the limits of permanent vegetation area that would be lawn in accordance with that recommendation. The other recommendation and stipulation for approval, I think, was relative to the fertilizers, which, as you mentioned, John, earlier, the applicant is amenable to the restriction that no fertilizers are to be used on the property. And the third item was the recommendation to move the house in a westerly direction forward on the lot to create a greater setback from the wetland edge to the proposed dwelling structure. When we were with the Conservation Commission, there wasn't a particular number, but when we came back to them with the new septic approval that had moved that dwelling 15 feet, obviously they were very pleased with that. So that was ended up being a 15 foot that we moved that house, and really didn't impact any of the other pieces of the approval that we had from DEM. So that was certainly something that was feasible to do, and definitely didn't create any additional adverse impacts as part of this project, but in fact, gave us a little bit more of a favorable condition on site, I think.
And by moving the house, does that require the front yard variance of 15 feet?
Yes, yes. So we're at 25 foot for our front setback to the proposed dwelling. And obviously this is the R30 zone we mentioned, with a 40-foot front yard setback, which would normally be the minimum requirement.
And just for clarification, did DM approve the OWTS with the house in the previous location 40 feet from the front yard line?
They did.
And the Conservation Commission requested that we move it forward and ask for the front yard variance, correct?
Yes.
And in your professional opinion, if the system is constructed and maintained to the required specifications, will the location of the OWTS within 150 feet of the wetland have an adverse impact on the wetland?
As designed, it would not. No.
Will it have any negative impacts on the surrounding properties?
No.
And does the new system provide additional protections to the wetlands?
Yes.
And is the need for the front yard variance due to the location of the wetlands on the lot?
It is.
And is the applicant proposing as narrow a house as possible in order to minimize the amount of variance necessary?
That's correct. There's a minimum of a 16-foot width on this house, and a maximum of 24-foot width on the southerly end, certainly as small as possible to meet the objectives for the owner.
But when you moved the house, you were still able to meet the side yard setback requirement on the right side of the lot?
That's correct.
And in your opinion, has the house been designed and located in a manner to minimize the amount of relief necessary?
It has.
And in your opinion, will the location of the house have any negative impacts on the abutting properties?
It won't.
And will the granting of the front yard variance impact cars driving by on the road in any manner?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions.
Okay, board members, questions for this witness?
Yes, Tom Daniels. I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Tom.
When you moved the footprint of the house forward at the request of the Conservation Commission, was it?
Yes.
Okay. That necessitated that you move the filter and the pump basin forward as well, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Was the Conservation Commission okay with that move?
Yes, that was discussed at our second visit, and we certainly mentioned that in doing so and making that adjustment, we actually were increasing the separation from those components, the building sewer pipe, the tank, the filter, and the pump basin. We're increasing the separation to the wetland edge, which was, a positive result of the move in general. So that was well received by the commission as well, and by DEM. We essentially reduced that portion of the variance that was originally approved by DEM on the second time around there.
Okay, second question I have is, when I visited this site, I noticed on the south side lot, which is identified as a lot 217, I believe. In the front of that lot, maybe 20 feet from the, maybe less, from the property line, there was a wellhead. It looked like a submersible pump, a wellhead, and I don't see that on the drawing. Were you aware of that, or did you happen to see that?
So I'm not aware of that on the adjacent lot. I know that there was an existing dug well on this particular property, lot 215, on the southwesterly corner. And I'm not sure if that is what you're referring to, but that within our DEM permit, the requirement is for that well to be permanently abandoned per the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management and DOH regulations. So that could have been the wellhead you saw, Mr. Daniels, because otherwise I'm not aware of another well on the adjacent property.
Yeah, well, that the abandoned well was on your piece of property, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
The subject property, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, what I noticed was, I thought it was on the blue above ground, typically of a submersible pump situation, seemed to be 10 to 15 feet away from the property line, but I would imagine someone is here that can either testify to that or not.
Our nearest well that we located when we put forth the original design application to DEM was over 130 feet away on lot 218, which is in a farther to the south. So that was the only one I was aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Rosen, just to expand, this is Richard Cherzak. Just to expand, will you just tell us, how do you go about locating all these wells? What's the procedure that you would use?
So there's a couple of different ways to do it. Obviously, with adjacent private properties, if we are locating the wells on site, we'll need to get permission to access. We were given a survey done by the owner previous to us coming on board with the project, or a survey done on behalf of the owner that had the locations, and we basically went into this roadway corridor and just verified visually that those locations seemed accurate based on our field determinations. Everything else, inside of the property limits and in the public right of way, we were able to confirm and relocate based on our own survey and engineering means. So the other piece of this is when applications are submitted to DEM for on-site wastewater treatment systems in the area, they become public records. So we can supplement our field work with the research at the DEM and, utilize their diagrams and maps to show and determine where the adjacent septic systems are and where any adjacent water services or wells are to some degree. So it's a combination of a couple of different things to answer your question.
Okay, board members, additional questions?
Yeah, I think I have one additional question. Mr. Rosen, did you happen to see some of the photographs of the water in the street that were submitted as part of the application on the other side?
I have, and I've actually been to the site when Rosebriar Avenue did have standing water inside of the right of way, and at the throat of this cul-de-sac. In fact, through this process, when we took the additional site elevations that I mentioned earlier, we had to supply that information to DEM. But once we determined what the drainage patterns were and that the runoff within the street system at the northerly end of Rosebriar drains to those catch basins or dry wells, we put a request in on behalf of the property owner that the dry wells be inspected and maintained or replaced as necessary. And we received information from the town highway department that those two dry wells in the throat of the cul-de-sac were determined not to be functioning properly and that they were put into their program for replacement.
So is it your professional opinion that any accumulation of water in a roadway would not cause an incursion into your filter pod or pump basin?
Correct. In fact, there's a change in topography on the easterly end or off the easterly edge of Rosebriar Avenue, off that pavement. The front property line of the applicant's property that's shown in the bold line here, that's almost like a berm where the water stays contained on the site and that water drains into the wetland system, whereas the water within the right of way and the area properties actually drains into the street system. And at the low point right now is at those two structures labeled on our plan as dry wells. It's just unfortunate that dry wells aren't necessarily functioning to the maximum extent possible. So once we determined what our stormwater flow was and sort of how those standing water locations have come about, that's when we made that request to the town department, because we determined that a maintenance program on those two structures would certainly help the overall condition of that water within the roadway.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, additional questions?
John Bernardo has a question.
Go ahead, John.
So, Mr. Rosen, so, yeah, I was out there too, and I saw a catch basin. And in fact, the neighbor said it's not working, and of course, you already confirmed that. But my question is, if you go ahead and build this house and the town hasn't repaired that or replaced it, will the house design and construction contribute to the water problem that's there now?
So it will not. That's a great question. That's obviously something we were concerned with. And, you know, as well as being good neighbors, we certainly aren't going to want to contribute to a problem that's going to denigrate the value of our property and the enjoyment of the property. So, you know, when we looked at those elevations, we did determine, in fact, that the change in condition for this house development is only going to generate a runoff in the same historical drainage pattern that it does today with respect to our property limits. Everything is draining to the wetland system. We have a stormwater management system to reduce our impacts to that wetland system. And as far as the water into the street, there's no water that's going to leave the property in that manner that would further exacerbate the situation that's there today.
Just one follow-up question. So, as I understand, I only saw one grate out in front of the property in the terminus of the road there. And are you saying that's a dry well?
Correct. In other words, it's not a drainage system that is tied to any other structure or pond or basin. They're just designed to, they were built and designed to collect the water.
Yeah, like
and
a cesspool.
it. And, you know, if they're not maintained properly, the sand and whatnot kind of blocks the outlet to those structures. It makes it difficult for them to drain properly.
Do you know if the town intends to simply clear it out or clean it out, whatever the proper verbiage is, or do they intend to create a culvert or put a culvert system in there to drain it away?
From what I understand from speaking with the town highway department, they're not going to necessarily route that water to any other location, but they were committed to actually replacing, not just cleaning out, but replacing those structures. I didn't get an exact time frame on that, but that's something that the request was made on our property owner's behalf.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, other board members, questions?
This is Rob Kegna. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rosen, so there is an existing house on this property now?
There is not.
There is not. Oh, okay. I thought you said you were replacing a system. So, okay.
That it?
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions?
I have one question.
Go ahead, Mr. Rosen.
Somewhere in my reading, I saw that if you don't have approval today from the zoning board, you're going to go back to the old proposal?
I'm not,
which was approved by DEM, as my understanding.
I'm not aware of that. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Kenyon if he has any other information on that question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I can address that. I believe that was in the next witness's report, Mr. Pimentel. So he's going to be testifying regarding that next.
Thank you. That was a question from William Rosen to Josh Rosen, so
All right.
I'll wait for the next
Good.
witness.
All right. Any other questions from the board for this witness? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Rosen. Okay, go ahead, John. Will you do what you need to do?
If I could have Ed Pimentel sworn in.
Okay, Mr. Pimentel, would you please spell your name first for the record?
It's Edward Pimentel. That's Pimentel.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. And Mr. Pimentel, are you the principal at Pimentel Consulting, Inc.?
I am.
And what are your duties there?
I started a consulting practice approximately 20 years ago, primarily dealing with development throughout the state of Rhode Island and southeastern Mass. So I do everything from actual development design, reviewing comprehensive plans, addressing zoning requirements, writing regulations on behalf of developments, etc.
And can you describe to the board your educational background?
I have both a bachelor's and a master's in urban and community planning, and I've been a nationally certified planner since 1996.
And can you describe your professional background?
So I've been a municipal planner in Florida, Massachusetts, and throughout Rhode Island for 30 years. Municipally, I've either been in planning and or zoning for various municipalities, including including Tiverton, Barrington, North Kingstown, presently East Providence, and also consulted for the towns of North Smithfield and the town of Gloucester.
And do you have any planning certifications?
Once again, I am a nationally certified planner. I have been so since 1996. I have testified in all 39 cities and towns before all the planning boards, zoning boards, and councils, as well as in every superior court.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that Mr. Pimentel be recognized as an expert in zoning and planning.
Okay, board members, does anyone object to recognizing Mr. Pimentel as an expert?
No.
Okay, hearing none, so be it. He's recognized.
Thank you. And Mr. Pimentel, are you familiar with the applicant's property on Rosebriar Avenue?
I am. I've been there on several occasions, both to review the property itself, as well as to assist in preparation of an extensive neighborhood analysis, which I typically do when discussing development of a lot.
And as a part of that, you're familiar with the surrounding properties?
I am. I analyzed as many as 47 distinct properties surrounding this lot.
And did you review the applicant's plan to construct a single-family home with an OWTS on the property?
I did. I thoroughly reviewed, actually, I reviewed both iterations and then compared the plans to the both the zoning regulations and the pertinent regulations that were applicable, as well as to the goals and objectives of actually both comprehensive plans that I reviewed. Right now, we're presently operating under a comprehensive plan that is somewhat dated, but it is still the one in effect. But I also felt that there will soon be one coming on board and that it has newer information. So I also thoroughly reviewed that from cover to cover, the draft 2019. So I compared the proposal, the development in relationship to the character of the neighborhood and to the respective goals and objectives of both comprehensive plans.
And did you submit a report with your findings?
I did. I submitted both my report and also my entire neighborhood analysis with the conclusions of said analysis.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to note that was submitted previously with the board. And Mr. Pimentel, can you explain the conclusions you came to and how you made those determinations?
Sure. So I probably now in my 30-year municipal career, my 20-year consulting career, I probably have reviewed upwards of 150 to 200 lots for development. On the consulting side, very standard that many of these lots have constraints. So you end up having to try to develop them in some feasible and reasonable manner. The properties are recognized as being lots of record, meaning they're entitled to some reasonable and enjoyable usage. In the subject instance, the surrounding neighborhood, out of the 47 lots I reviewed, 40 of them have residentially improved, predominantly single-family residences. There are a couple of lots that have 2 single families on them. I'm sure that's something that predates zoning, but the predominant character is single family. So in that light, when you're looking at a property, a lot, and you're applying the respective zoning requirements, the dimensional criteria, and you're dealing with a lot with constraints, what you're doing is you're balancing reasonable usage of that lot and doing so balancing with what surrounds that property and character. So in other words, if you take a typical standard R30 lot and you were to apply the respective side, rear, and front setbacks, you end up with a rather reasonable building envelope. The reality in the subject instance, as Mr. Rosen has already testified to, is that you end up with a lot that approximately almost just 1/3 of it is deemed buildable, and it's all towards the front. So you're really balancing usage of that piece of land to place a residence, which you're entitled to, but you want to do something that balances with what's in character of the neighborhood so you don't impact the surrounding neighborhood negatively. If you look at the results of my neighborhood analysis, and I don't skew the numbers, I take all lots into consideration, large, small, and otherwise, the average footprint in this neighborhood is 1,592 square feet, or approximately 1,600. We're proposing something that's approximately 50% of that footprint because we have a constrained parcel. If you take a look at the surrounding neighborhood, on average, the average lot is covered by 11%. Now, there is no way for me to determine what constraints are on these surrounding parcels. We, on the other hand, were able to determine that our lot has approximately 9,800 or so square feet of buildable area. If you take that into consideration, just the 9,800 square feet of buildable area, we're still larger than the majority of the surrounding parcels that average in the 7,000 to 9,000 square foot range. And if you were to argue that none of those lots have any constraints of development, we're still under the impervious coverage that these parcels have been improved, because we have more significant information now that we have our fingertips on. That's why we have these zoning regulations in place to try to minimize impact on wetlands, placement of residences, placement of OWTSs. Back in those days, you didn't have that type of information. So we're really balancing the constraints we have and doing so in relationship to the character of the surrounding neighborhood. I know that many of the standards for the granting of the special use permit have already been addressed by Mr. Rosen. So I primarily concentrated on the respective burdens for the dimensional relief. I know that one of the board members asked about going back to the original iteration. And the only reason why I stated something to that effect was that anything that's permitted by special use has already been deemed pursuant to both the enabling legislation and well-founded case law, that it's already deemed conditionally permissible. So there's already a determination that it is permissible, it is appropriate. When you're departing from the regulations and seeking a variance, now you have to prove hardship. And so the only reason I brought that up was that I believe, and I'm going to argue now, that we meet the respective burdens. But if there was a concern that we're incurring this hardship or self-created and so forth, even though it was at the direction of the Conservation Commission, we do have the ability to still enjoy reasonable usage of this property and comply fully with the dimensional criteria. And that was the only reason for my stating that. I think personally, for good planning practices, it's better to incur a singular small dimensional variance and to realize greater separation from the wetlands. It's just much more beneficial from an environmental perspective. So in regards to the respective burdens, I would argue that the characteristics of this lot, these very unique characteristics, is what's driving the placement of the OWTS and the single family residence. Once again, a good portion of the rear property is constrained with wetlands and then the respective setbacks. And that's why we were required to push everything forward towards the front yard setback. And thus the reason for being unable, well, we're able, but preferring not to fully comply with the front yard setback variance. Number two, these constraints were not created by this property owner or any previous property owner. They've been natural constraints of the land. Number three, I would ardently argue that this is not primarily for financial gain. This is for somebody to enjoy some reasonable usage of their property. We're asking for a small home that is, once again, 50% on average of what surrounding properties have. And I would say that that's really meeting the requirements of contending that we, once again, seek the least relief necessary. Singular variance, really balancing what we have remaining for buildable land area regarding the footprint we're proposing. And once again, the hardship, the standard is a really low threshold beyond a mere inconvenience. I would argue, I would contend on the record that although we don't need a use variance, I believe we could meet that burden. Because if you were to deny development of this property for a small 2-bedroom, a footprint that's approximately 738 square feet plus the deck, you would really be extinguishing all beneficial usage of this property, of which you are legally entitled to. I don't know if anybody has questions.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman. If the board members have any questions?
Board members, go ahead. Anybody?
I'll
Anybody?
just say, this is William Rosen. I'll just say that that explanation satisfies one of my concerns.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this gentleman? Okay, no questions. John, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, with us tonight is also Charlie Walsh, who's the applicant. I didn't have any questions for him. I just wanted to give him the opportunity if he wants to address the board or if the board has any questions of him as the owner and applicant of the property.
Well, let's swear him in. Mr. Walsh, would you spell your name, please?
My name is Charles Walsh, Charles, last name Walsh, Walsh.
Okay, sir, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead. I'm not sure what we're going to, go ahead.
Well, I want to thank the board for meeting and taking on this important issue for myself and my family. My parents started this journey back in the early 60s with the dream of putting a beach house on Rosebriar for their retirement years. Unfortunately, they have since passed, and I'm looking forward to your approval this evening and to be able to fulfill that dream of my parents of almost 60 years ago. So I look forward to your approval and hopefully enjoying South Kingstown in my elder years.
Okay, we'll welcome you. Mr. Walsh, are you planning, is there a basement on the house? You're
No, there
planning. Okay, fine. Okay, board members, questions for this gentleman? Okay, thank you, sir. Anything else, John?
No, I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to reserve the ability to address any issues raised
Right.
by the neighbors.
Yeah, what I'm going to plan on doing here to make some sense is I'm going to ask anyone who wants to speak, and then any questions they bring up, we will then have you answer at that point. You can pick either Mr. Rosen, Mr. Walsh, or Mr. Pimentel, whichever you please. Okay. All right. Not Amy. Jess, would you tell the people again in the audience how they can be heard? What do they have to do? Because I'm going to ask in a second anyone who wants to be heard, and I want them to know how to do it. Go ahead.
Sure. So if you are on your computer, there is a button that says to raise hand. You'll hit that. That'll go ahead and raise your hand, which we will see. If you're calling in by phone, you're going to hit *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 will mute and unmute you. So I see someone's got a hand raised now. So once the chairman is ready, we will call you by name, and then we'll swear you in and you'll be able to speak. Mr. Chairman, first, did you want me to read the list of
Yeah.
objectors'
Yeah,
correspondence?
why don't you do that? We've got a number of letters, so the town received a number of letters. We're not going to go through every letter and read it, but Jessica's going to read the list of the letters that she has. Go ahead, Jessica.
Okay, I have a correspondence from the Jean B. Riley Trust dated April 9th, 2020. That was attached with 2 photos. I have a correspondence from Bert Hess dated April 15th, 2020. I have a correspondence from the concerned residents of Rosebriar Avenue dated April 21st, 2020. I have another correspondence that was received on April 22nd, 2020. I have an additional correspondence from Bert Hess received May 19th, 2020. There's also an additional correspondence from the concerned residents of Rosebriar Avenue received May 19th, 2020. There's a correspondence from Jeff and Helena Roberts received May 21st, 2020. There is a correspondence from Jean B. Riley Trust dated June 19th, 2020 with 2 additional photos. And then finally, there is one more letter from the concerned residents of Rosebriar Avenue dated June 23rd, 2020. And all of those correspondence were forwarded to the board members for review.
Okay. Now, please be relevant. Okay. We want to hear from you, but please try to stay on point. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor or opposition to this petition? If so, raise your hand and we will go down the list and pick you. I'm not sure how Jess picks the order, but
The order auto populates as to who
okay.
raises their hand
Okay.
first.
So who raises their hand first? Okay. Do we have someone, Jessica?
I do. I have a Bill Riley.
Okay. Mr. Riley, are you there?
I am, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Riley, please, will you spell your name, please?
William, W-I-L-L-I-A-M, Riley, R-I-L-E-Y.
Okay, sir, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I'm mostly going to ask questions and I swear to tell the truth.
Okay, go ahead.
My first question is for Joshua Rosen.
Okay,
Would you acknowledge that the driveway runoff will run into the street?
This is Amy Goins, legal counsel, and Mr. Chair, I think you'll agree. I think the best procedure would be to take all the questions from the
Right.
interested parties, and then at the end, the applicant and their team can respond as appropriate.
okay, why don't we do that? I think what I would like to do, Amy, though, is do it by person, by caller, so we don't forget. Yeah, Mr. Riley, go ahead, give us all your questions, and then we'll pick the experts who will answer your questions. Go ahead.
Okay, the driveway water is going to run into the street. The
Okay, go ahead.
dry wells, which the town had thought about replacing, are not going to be replaced because there's no place for the water to go. So in the meantime, they have just gone ahead and stone sealed the street because there's no place for the water to go. They can build the biggest dry well there is, and there's no place for the water to go because of the water table. Second question is for Attorney Kenyon. Would like to have him acknowledge that the drawing that is on the screen is different from the drawing which was submitted in his application. And also would like to ask him to acknowledge that if I were to look at the South Kingstown municipal variances, that for section 504.1.b, it would say that the zoning board has no authority to approve a dimensional variance for a setback if the use permit is being applied for. And I would ask the chairman to acknowledge that if this is granted, that the town would fix the water problem in front of the house.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Riley?
Oh, thank you much.
Okay, all right, let's just go through those questions. The first one with regard to the driveway, John, who are you gonna have to answer that? Mr. Rosen?
Yes, Josh can answer that.
I can, thank you. So the driveway runoff contained within the site will actually not drain to the street. One is it's a crushed stone permeable driveway surface. That's what we're proposing. That's what the next step at CRMC with these types of applications they will look for. And the topography and elevations are such that the front of the property drains toward the wetland, not toward the street. The water that's in the street right now is the water from the street itself and from adjacent properties. And we will not be adding to that particular issue as a result of this property development. As far as the drains in the road, we've discussed those, and because of the site conditions, there will need to be just more frequent maintenance on those structures once they are replaced. I have a feeling that, I don't know when we're going to replace them, but they will just require more attention on the town's behalf as far as it being in a town right away than maybe some normal drains, because just like the many dry wells in town, those are designed to discharge, and they're not into the ground surface or the ground beneath. They're not transported away. So that would be something for the neighborhood to implore the town to pay more attention to that particular issue, I think.
Amy, thank you, Josh. Amy, would you opine as to that second question with regard to the granting of the variance at the same time granting a special use permit?
Yeah, this is the Bradywood rule, right? We had the applicant a couple of years ago, I think at this point, petition the council to amend the zoning ordinance to provide that a special use permit and a variance may be granted in conjunction where the application is, as it is here, for an OWTS and setback relief. So this is a proper application.
Okay, and lastly, Mr. Riley, I obviously have no ability to guarantee anything for the town of South Kingstown. So I cannot do that. All right. Okay, is there anyone else in the audience who wants to speak in favor or opposition to this petition?
Greenhill Burt is raising his hand.
Okay, who was that now?
Greenhill Burt. I will
Oh.
change his name once I have it.
Okay, all right, Greenhill Burt. Hello?
He just needs to unmute himself.
Can you unmute yourself? There you go. You seem to be
There you go.
unmuted. Are you somebody there?
Yes.
Okay, will you give me your name, please?
Bert Hess,
Okay, spell your name, please.
B-E-R-T, last name H-E-S-S.
Okay, sir, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Right, just a couple comments. It's next to impossible to hire local professional engineers and attorneys because they have prior and they do current work for the town. I was in touch with at least four, including one attorney that was mentioned, Mr. Kenyon mentioned, and some of these professionals do not want to deal with a group, but mostly it's because they do town work. So finally went out of town, and this is the reason, had to go all the way to Hartford for Robinson and Cole. And sadly that you picked Culvert 19 at this time to after 60 or 70 years of attempting to develop this property, that you're doing it at this time. I have given Robinson and Cole a retention, and I would like them to be able to perform. The section 907 has been designed, no doubt, just to allow this very purpose of developing this property. And I believe that the town does not care to protect their existing wetlands. This is a large parcel that was joined together from two parcels because neither one could support a house. And it's an area that should be preserved as wetlands. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
don't-
Amy, excuse me, Amy, are you muted? Okay. Again, I should ask, I guess, is the attorney from Robinson and Cole here today?
No, he isn't. We just got him on board as of yesterday.
Okay, it's a very large firm. Could he not have someone here today?
They haven't even received the retention yet. It's in the mail. It's because it was unable to hire anyone locally.
Okay,
And we spent time, and each local engineer, they, don't answer you the same day. But they do work for the town. They're going to continue to do work for the town. They ask in many cases that their name not be used.
My suggestion, this is Amy Goins, legal counsel. Rick, my suggestion would be ask Attorney Kenyon if he would be amenable to a final continuance to next month. That may be in his interest because it could help to avoid an appeal. However, an appeal may be inevitable anyway. So, if the relief is granted, and if the check is indeed in the mail, they certainly can exercise their appellate right. So I think the ball is in the applicant's court as to how much leeway we want to allow. I would just say, on one hand, they have had several months, the objectors have had several months to retain someone. That being said, it's understandable that in these times and for the reasons raised, it might have taken a little longer. So I think it's up to the board, it's up to the applicant.
Mr. Kenyon, how do you feel about that?
Well, as Amy stated, we have continued it a couple times in response to Mr. Hess. We certainly didn't plan to file this during the pandemic. We were in front of the Conservation Commission in December of last year, starting this. So it certainly wasn't our intention to do it where it had to be done during Zoom. I understand their request, and certainly if the board is in favor of continuing it for that reason, we will not object.
Okay. We seem to be continuing a lot of things here till next meeting. And I'm not sure that, to be honest with you, if we continue this, Amy, till next meeting, we have a lot of stuff on already next meeting. I'm not sure we would get to it. So maybe continuing it to a meeting after that. And
That
it's been
Mr. Chairman, that would be July 22nd would be the following meeting.
yeah. Board members, how do you feel about this? What do you think, Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I'll
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Before you make that decision, there is someone else who wishes to speak in the attendees. I don't know if you want to hear him first.
Let me just get this out of the way with regard to the continuance, the thoughts, okay? And then we'll,
Okay, I'll
go ahead,
I'll
Mr.
go.
Daniels. Yeah,
Tom Daniels, member. Out of an abundance of caution, I think anytime that anyone indicates that they've retained counsel in a matter, I think the board needs to be cognizant of that fact. And I take Mr. Hess's argument and his testimony that he's had trouble trying to get a local engineer and a local attorney. I can understand that. He's indicated that they've contacted and contracted with an attorney. And I think we as a board, in an abundance of caution, need to continue based on that assertion.
okay. Thank you. Mr. Bernardo, how do you feel?
I echo the sentiments of my brother, Tom Daniels.
Okay. Mr. Cagnetta, how do you feel?
I would agree with Mr. Daniels. I mean, yes, they did have an opportunity to do it sooner, but it doesn't mean they don't have, they still shouldn't be heard.
Okay, Mr. Rosen?
I agree with what Mr. Hess wants to do. I would just ask, isn't our next meeting July 15th?
Mr. Rosen, it is July 15th, but the chairman was referring to the fact that we have a very heavy agenda, and more than likely, we're going to have to carry it over till the following week, which is the 22nd.
So
And we would need all members present tonight available for probably both meetings.
We probably have to have a special meeting, Jessica, you're saying, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Before
wanted
we
to
have a
clarify.
vote, is someone else have a comment? Okay, before we
Uh,
have a vote, let's just see who that other person raising their hand was.
It
Okay.
is Chris Fontaine, and I'm going to allow him to talk.
Yep. Go ahead. Mr. or Ms. Fontaine, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sir, will you spell your name?
Christopher Fontaine, Chris, just like Christmas, except Topher at the end, and Fontaine, Fontaine.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Okay, go ahead. Tell us what you'd like to tell us.
My questions, I am a graduate engineer. My questions, and in a butter, my questions would be more technical, and if in fact this is going to be delayed, then I will hold my questions until it comes up at a subsequent, hopefully maybe not Zoom meeting.
Well, why don't we not do that? Why don't you bring your questions up now?
Well,
Mr. Chairman, point of order. If we're going to continue this, I mean, how can we take testimony now?
Well, I would like that why not have the engineer be able to answer these questions for the next meeting? If there's questions that he can think about them, I suppose.
I don't think it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, but that's my opinion. I'll ask Amy.
This is Amy. I think the purpose of the continuance would be to allow the attorney to present his side of the objector's case. So I think it's all right for the interested parties on the call tonight to ask questions. I don't, maybe a little bit duplicative, but assuming it doesn't take hours, then I think we can allow it.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Fontaine.
First question, I heard Mr. Rosen make a statement that the groundwater level there was 4 feet. I'm not sure as to what date that groundwater reading was made. We've been living adjacent to that property in my family for more than 40 years. I have never not seen groundwater there in drought, number one. Number two, in the design notes of the application for the OWTS, it says that there are no proposed wetlands within 200 feet of the OWTS. I believe there are wetlands flagged to the east of the property development as I look at the plan. There are no wetland flags on the abutting property that is owned by James Briggs Trust, JRC Realty Corporation, James R. Briggs Trust, and our property. I also do not believe there are any wetlands flagged on the property to the west.
Is that
Is
it? No, well, wait a second. No, we're not gonna go question by question. What other questions do you have, Mr. Fontaine?
That's it for now.
Okay, go ahead, John. Would you like Josh Rosen to answer?
Yes, if you could.
Go ahead, Josh.
Thanks. Josh Rosen again. So I've got 2 questions to answer, I believe. The first one on the groundwater depth. I believe the question from Mr. Kenyon was, what was our separation from the groundwater to the bottom of our sand filter or our system? And that I answered was a 4-foot separation based on how it was designed and approved. That was not the actual groundwater table of this particular property. The second item, the plan notes in our sheets here are items that are required for us to address by DEM rules. And the note indicates that unless indicated, there are no watercourses, wetlands, and or drains within 200 feet of the OWTS. Obviously, we have indicated the nearest proximity of those wetlands. So that's how the note actually reads.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other people in the audience who want to speak in favor or opposition to this petition?
No
Mr.
one is-
Chairman, point of order, I'm going to move that we continue the hearing.
Okay, Mr. Daniels, please, okay? Okay, if
I
you want
made
to
the
take,
motion.
if you
I
want to
made a
take
motion.
over as chairman, you can.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
But as far as I'm concerned at this point, okay, I'm running the meeting.
I
Okay.
understand that.
All right,
And I made a motion.
okay,
And you can, and it can be seconded and voted on or not. I think the
Okay.
motion is in order.
all right. All right, is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak in favor or opposition to the petition?
No one
Okay,
else
now-
has raised their hand.
Okay, now you can make your motion, Mr. Daniels.
I made it.
Make it again.
Motion to continue to July 22nd.
Okay, can everybody now next on July 22nd? We have how many matters on already, Jessica?
I don't know. This would be the first one on that. It's gonna depend on what happens on July 15th, what else is carried over. So not to speak out of turn, but I think maybe it should be moved to July 15th, and then that night we could possibly carry it over to the 22nd if needed. I
Okay,
think
so
a lot of it is gonna depend on if the Brood Awakenings petition ends up getting heard that night or not. That's gonna,
And Jess and Rick, don't forget, actually, we usually set aside the fourth Wednesday of the month as a special meeting date. In July, there happens to be 5 Wednesdays. So if folks are available on the 29th as well, that's an option.
okay, Mr. Daniels, is your motion for a special meeting?
The motion is to continue to July 15 with the possibility of moving to July 22nd and or July 29th, depending on the agenda that's presented at that time.
You know, I think that's a good idea. This is Amy again, because the objectors should be advised to communicate the July 15th date ASAP with their attorney. And I'm assuming as soon as he receives and cashes the check, he'll advise whether him or someone from his firm can be there on the 15th. And probably the sooner that the two attorneys get in touch, the better, because they may well agree to postpone it further, or they may agree upon another date. So let's do the 15th for now. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Daniels. Someone want to second it?
Second,
Okay, is
Bernardo.
it- Okay, any discussion?
I'm not available on the 29th for whatever it's worth.
Okay,
No, that's worth a lot, because we would need you. So it would either have to be the 15th or is everyone available on the 22nd?
Yes.
As far as I
Everybody
know
there?
right now.
Okay.
okay, all right. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Bernardo, you seconded. Okay, let's have a vote. Mr. Daniels?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Bernardo?
Aye.
Mr. Cagnetta?
Oh, I'm sorry, aye.
Rosen? Mr. Rosen?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Jurzak, aye. Okay, so it's continued until the 15th, right?
Thank you. Have a
Okay,
good night, everybody.
all right,
Thank you, John.
all right. Do we have, is
Good
there
night,
any,
everybody.
is there anything else on the agenda?
Is there minutes approval?
no, the minutes aren't ready yet. We're still waiting on finalization of decisions from the previous meeting, so.
Quick,
Okay.
quick discussion perhaps regarding Zoom meetings and in-person meetings,
Okay, go ahead.
if you'll entertain me.
No, go
quick,
right ahead.
So I don't know what plans the town manager has regarding resuming in-person meetings versus keeping meetings strictly limited to Zoom. I will just note the latest executive order, which is 20-46, allowing remote meetings to continue as we've been doing, requires that even if a public body subject to the OMA meets in person, that there must still be an option for remote participation. So I know some boards are are beginning to resume meeting in person with the board alone, and then, you know, having the applicant come in. My suggestion for my 2 cents, it's cumbersome, it's tedious. I think we're all sick of seeing the little squares on the screen, but I think it's been working pretty well. And we know that, you know, having a lot of people in a poorly ventilated space is, you know, is what is the key thing here for transmission. So, you know, it's up to the manager. And I don't know if staff has any insight, but I would say, unfortunately, and I know the all the abutters as well, no one likes to Zoom, everyone likes to come into town hall. But I think we're going to be continuing this way for a few more months at minimum.
Amy, that's not up to us, right? I mean, the council is going to tell us what to do, right?
Correct.
Okay, fine. All right. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, second, anyone?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Have a nice night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.